Good morning, everybody. It's Wednesday morning and welcome to Ben Vicarage. Lovely to see you and thank you for joining us for our Bible talk for this morning. And today we start a new Bible book. We finished Psalms yesterday and today we're going to start Genesis. A 50th chapter of Genesis. It's a fascinating read. We're going to work through it the next few weeks. So, without further ado, I shall read you Genesis chapter 1. In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while the wind from God swept over the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. There was evening, and there was morning, the first day. And God said, "Let there be a dome in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters." So God made the dome and separated the waters that were under the dome from the waters that were above the dome. And it was so. God called the dome sky. And there was evening and there was morning, the second day. And God said, "Let the waters under the sky be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the waters that were gathered together he called seas. And God saw that it was good. And God said, "Let the earth put forth vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees of every kind on earth that bear fruit with the seed in it." And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed of every kind, and trees of every kind bearing fruit with the seed in it. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the third day. And God said, "Let there be lights in the dome of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons, and for days and years." And God let them be lights in the dome of the sky to give light upon the earth. And it was so. God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night, and the stars. God set them in the dome of the sky to give light upon the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the fourth day. And God said, "Let the waters bring forth swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the dome of the sky." So God created the great sea monsters and every living creature that moves of every kind, with which waters swarm, and every winged bird of every kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply. Fill the waters in the seas, and let birds multiply on the earth." And there was evening and there was morning, the fifth day. And God said, "Let the earth bring forth living creatures of every kind, cattle and creeping things, and wild animals of the earth of every kind." And it was so. God made the wild animals of the earth of every kind, and cattle of every kind, and everything that creeps upon the ground of every kind. And God saw that it was good. And God said, "Let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the sea, of the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all wild animals of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth." So God created humankind in his image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them. God blessed them. And God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth." God said, "See, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is upon the face of the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit, and you shall have them for food. And to every beast of the earth, and every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps upon the earth, everything that has the breath of life, I have given every green plant for food." And it was so. And God saw everything he had made, and indeed it was very good. And there was evening and there was morning, the sixth day. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all their multitude. And on the seventh day God finished the work he had done, and he rested the seventh day from all the work he had done. So God blessed the seventh day and hallowed it, because on it God rested from the work he had done in creation. And this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Okay, there's a huge amount I could say in this incredible reading. This could be a very long talk, and maybe slightly longer than usual. There is absolutely masses in there, and as I say, there's many PhDs have been written. Let me just say a few little things about it which you can reflect on. I mean, there's so much you can say, it's really quite what you leave out. Firstly, to say from the beginning, this is a unique passage in the Bible. Unique in the sense that it has no context. I always say to people, look at the context, find out what's going on when something happens. Of course, because this is Genesis chapter 1, beginning of creation, it is no context. It's a very unusual passage. What you have from the beginning is God. That God is at the beginning and also God is at the end. Children sometimes ask me in school, who made God? The answer is no one made God. God was there from the very beginning. God is the genesis of everything, if you might say. So the context in here is that God was there at the beginning before the earth was made, and God was there at the end as well. So I think that's the first thing really I want to say about this passage, is that the context is simply God. Secondly, I want us to look at, people often compare this with kind of, biology textbooks and this type of stuff as well. I think what you want to see from this passage really is the beauty and the poetry with which the creation story is laid out. It's written on kind of over a sort of 7-day period, and you can see it each time it has, and each day starts with "and God said," and then "let there be," whatever, and then "and it was so," and then you got God saw that it was good, then God called it something, then there was evening and there was morning, the so and so day. So each 7 times it goes, and God said, "let there be," then "and it was so." God saw that it was good. Notice God's creation is good. God called evening, whatever. Then there was evening and there was morning, and then it tells you what day it was. So with a few sort of variations en route, that's essentially what you've got. But notice the incredible poetry. This isn't just some sort of biology textbook. This is beautifully done. The poetry of it does justice to the grandeur of creation. So see here that the beauty and the passion with which it's laid out, that beauty, as I say, gives feeling, gives passion to God's amazing creation. Okay. The third thing I want to say is that there have been criticisms over the years that essentially what the writer of Genesis got was he got other creation stories at the time, and simply just that's where he got his ideas from and did that. And there's simply it's a reworking of other creation ideas. Well, that has been argued. I actually would say the opposite from my understanding. Other creation stories are very different. Other creation stories have gods and have battles, and that creation came out because there was some great battle or whatever. Actually, what is clear in this is that God is God, and that there is one God, and that God creates the world. Okay. So notice there is no sort of battle with anything else. This isn't a result of anything. This is simply God is sovereign here. That God created the heaven and the earth. That's the third thing. So it's not just that ideas are being borrowed from elsewhere. Actually, to some extent, this story is very different because it has one God. It has the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, as for the rest of Genesis. But it's one God as opposed to lots of gods. The fourth thing to say is that, in a sense, if you read the story carefully, in Genesis chapter 1, it has that the world is kind of, that God's made it. There isn't a lot of detail about that. What you do get in Genesis 1 is more about how God orders it, how God separates the night from the day, the earth from the sea, and God separates. It's about bringing order out of chaos. That there has been chaos. There was with the face of the abyss and that type of stuff in Genesis chapter 1, in chapter 1 verse 1. But notice what God does in Genesis chapter 1 is he creates order out of chaos. That God, and later on in Jesus, when you have Jesus stilling the storm and that type of stuff, that they were astonished that he could do this because he was doing something that only God could do. He was creating order out of chaos. That only God can create order out of the sea. So put not in your handkerchief for that one. So when you hear later on stories about Jesus stilling the storm and that type of stuff, remember what you're supposed to hear is that Jesus is doing something which God does in Genesis chapter 1. Then just a couple more things, just sort of things to wrap this up. Then he says, God make humankind in our image. Hang on, where is it? Genesis chapter 1 verse 26, he says, and God said, let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness. And there's a couple of things about that. First, you notice that there's, in a sense, it's one God, but I think there's implications here for the Trinity, for the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. One God, but three persons within the water. That's what it means by this is made God in our creation. And also, while we're on this one, notice we are made in the image of God. I don't know about you, but I don't always feel as I'm made in image. I don't often feel particularly beautiful. But please know that you and I are made in God's image, which is a remarkable thing, actually. But then finally, of course, notice also that God created the world in 6 days, and that on the seventh day, God rested, and that actually we all need Sabbath, actually, that we need to rest one day a week. If God has to rest a day a week, I'm sure that we do too. And it's very important that we do rest our bodies, but also that, especially in things like church work, that it reminds us that it's not all dependent on us. That actually we take downtime. In that time, we leave God to do the real work. So there's a huge amount in this incredible chapter. Just a few things, just very, very quickly. Notice the unique context. The context is that God is the context. Nothing had happened before because it's Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. Notice, secondly, the poetry, the beauty, the grandeur of the way it's been laid out. Just giving the poetry, giving justice to the majesty and the might and the poetry of God's creation. Thirdly, notice that actually it's we have one God here. That unlike the other stories, the sort of Babylonian myths at the time, actually God is God, and that God is supreme completely. Notice also that we don't hear much about how God made the world. People don't actually what we hear more about is how God fashioned the world and how God created order out of chaos and made the world habitable for the likes of you and I. Then notice that we are made in God's image, but it does say here, let's make humankind in our image. And I think there's an implication here for the Trinity, for the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And then finally notice how it's important that God took downtime, that God needs Sabbath. And my friends, we need Sabbath too. I hope that's helpful. God bless you. I hope we're going to enjoy these wonderful chapters of Genesis next week. As I say, this is a fascinating book. If you've enjoyed it this morning, do please share this message with your friends. Let's get some more people watching as well. Have a lovely day. God bless you. And tomorrow we have the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve, etc. May bless you. Have a lovely day. Thanks for watching.